Who whispered in your ear when you were very young? Whose whispering voice do you still hear even now, these many years later? Who whispered in your ear and told you who you are in a way that helped shape the person you would become? And what did that whispering voice say? Jesus was an adult when he came to the waters of the Jordan to be baptized by John, but in Matthew's gospel, the story is told almost as if it is a second birth narrative. Before this story, Jesus does not speak. He does not act either, at least not in any way that Matthew records. But when Jesus emerged from the baptismal waters, dripping like an infant fresh from the womb, a voice from heaven said, "You are my Son, the beloved. My favor rests on you." How different it would be if this declaration of God's favor had occurred later in Jesus' life. It would sound very different if it were said only after Jesus had healed the sick, embraced the outcast, and preached good news to the poor. It would be very different because then we might conclude that God's favor was upon him because of all he had done, that in some way Jesus had earned the blessing. Instead, Jesus was immersed in God's favor before he had an opportunity to say anything or do anything. The very first words that Jesus heard as he emerged from the womb of baptism were like words whispered in a baby's ear. "You are my Son, the beloved. My favor rests on you." In some ways, of course, it was a unique blessing. When God called Jesus my Son, it speaks of the unique relationship that Jesus has with the one he called his Abba, his Papa. But Scripture also affirms that through Jesus, we are all drawn into an intimate relationship with God, so that now we are all children of God. So what was said to Jesus when he was baptized is the same that could be said to anyone when they are born or they are baptized. "You are my child, my beloved. My favor rests on you." It can be difficult to hear that voice. There are a lot of other voices out there, the voices of friends, strangers, and family members, the voices of the culture at large that speak with an amplified voice that is impossible to escape. The voice that calls you beloved can be all but drowned out by those other voices that may say very different things like, "You're nothing special, you're nobody, you don't matter, not really." There are still other voices that also make it difficult for us to hear the voice that calls us beloved. And ironically, those are the voices of praise, saying things like, "You're an excellent student. You're going to go places. You're really a special person. You're a good father. Your children are so polite. You have a lot to be proud of." Now, obviously, we all need praise on occasion. But words of praise can make it harder for us to hear that voice that calls us beloved. After all, to be praised and to be beloved are very different things. Praise is something you earn. You have to do something to be praised. And if we seek praise often enough and receive it eagerly enough, it can come to seem as if everything, even love, must be earned. So the person who is motivated by praise is quite different from the one who feels assured that he is beloved or she is beloved. To be called beloved is not something that can be earned. It is a gift. There is nothing you have to do to be beloved. There is nothing you can do to be beloved. You are God's beloved. Not because of what you do, but simply because you are God's beloved. Even before you had a chance to do anything that could be called special, God whispers in your ear, "This is my child, the beloved, in whom I am well pleased." But it's hard to hear that voice sometimes. In fact, I believe that one of the reasons we are so determined to distinguish ourselves in some way is because we can't hear the voice that calls us beloved. Being different, a cut above, is the only way we know to keep from being lost in the crowd. We're afraid of feeling forgotten, of going unnoticed. and we will do almost anything to distinguish ourselves as special. All the praise we seek, all the recognition, the trophy, the degree, the office, the job, the promotion, the address, the accomplishments of our children, all the ways we endeavor to stand out, to enlarge the scope of our lives, all the ways we use to assure ourselves that we matter, that we have a place in the world, that we are loved. All because we assume we have to do something to be valued. I don't remember the first time I walked, but I imagine it went something like this. I stood at one end of the room with my mother, and my father was a full 3 steps away. And before that day, I could probably do the kind of creative dangling that almost looks like walking when somebody held me by the hands and shifted me from side to side as my feet barely touched the floor. But this is the day when I will try a real, honest walk on my own, all holds barred, with just 2 eager parents miles apart there to cheer me on. So I set out, wobbling at first, stumbling at second, but unmistakably making it on my own from one set of arms to the other. And then I imagine that my father lifted me high in the air with an exultant shout, as if no one in human history had ever walked before. Then, after numerous kisses and exclamations, I probably felt like the most loved, most marvelous boy in all the world. After a time, I could walk with more assurance. But for some reason, I didn't receive so much praise. In fact, I can't remember the last time that anyone praised me for walking across a room. So I had to do other things. Simply walking just wasn't good enough anymore. I had to strive to make a splash in other ways, just to get back to that feeling of being noticed, of being picked up with a shout of delight, of being valued. For the most part, we don't have much experience with unconditional love, so we try to create conditions in which we will feel worthy of love. We don't entirely trust love without reasons, so we strive to create reasons for the love received. And in all of that striving, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that my parents did not praise me because of my accomplishments. Rather, they praised my accomplishments because they loved me, and would have loved me if there were no accomplishments to praise. If parents have something like unconditional love, a love without reasons for their children, how much more so does God love God's children? All of our striving to try to win something that is ours already. God values you, not because you've distinguished yourself in some way, but because you are God's beloved. Many people may have whispered in your ear when you were very young. You may still hear some of their voices these many years later, telling you who you are in a way that shaped the person you would become. Some of those voices are probably encouraging, while other voices you may have spent much of your life trying to silence. But before all of those voices, and above all of those voices, is the one voice that before you could do anything or say anything to distinguish yourself in any way, said, "This is my child, the beloved. My favor rests on you." To love others, as Jesus did, first we are reminded that we are loved and have been since before the beginning, even as Jesus was.